So no one's
Well,
sure
we
how the body
missed.
got there, but it's a mystery.
So we missed the whole first part of this recording. We apologize. We are already at the steps. We've had some good discussion here. Just to recap really quickly, the file protocol listing details SEP is confusing in its approval and where it is in its status. I am going to check. Thank you, Eric, for bringing that up. I will make those changes and try to make that less confusing. It's terrible. And then thank you, Gareth, for adding that the proposal to add inclusive language SEP is cleaner and clearer. And please go check that out. There's been some updates. And in the chat, Derek added the new SEP on inclusive language. Is it a new SEP? Is that what happened? So do we need to close out the other one?
It is a new SEP. If we're still talking about the inclusive language, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was a new SEP. So I mean, we had discussed this internally, and we haven't up until this point had a situation like this to deal with. So I think we had decided we would close out the original one once the new one was approved. We would just leave it there for now for just historic purposes. Maybe like tag it as like in the comments or in the title as like deprecated or blanking on the right word for it, superseded, or yeah.
I think that I thought I read something in Tom's new SEP that said it supersedes the other one. But you're talking about making that change on the original?
Yeah, just in the title. That way it's clearer that
yep.
There's a new one that is supersedes the old one.
Okay. Okay. Great. Anything else? Any other questions? Okay, moving forward. What's next? Release updates. 3003.2 point release is targeted for August 4th. We are looking good for that date and moving towards that. We did open up a freeze branch for that and moving forward with that release. So you'll see that coming. And then the Silicon release is still, the RC date is August 25th. And then GA will be September 22nd. I have not put together a timeline for this. I will. There's been a lot of changes, and I was on PTO, and then and of course, like I've said for the last few times that I was here at the open hour, I completely messed up my timeline slide and had to start over and have not gotten back to that and really need to focus with that. I am being asked to also do release management for some other teams. And so I am swamped with some new tasks that are, wow, crazy. And so I apologize that I haven't gotten to this. I will try to do this week and make sure that it's available to everyone by the end of the month. Hopefully that will be satisfactory. These are on the calendar. If you go to our shared calendar that's out in a lot of places, you can find it, I believe, on our website in several places. It is an Outlook 365 calendar. It is on there and updated. Okay, and Q&A. Does anybody have any questions?
Actually, Sage, you forgot to mention, or didn't notice it, that we released 3003.1 for AIX yesterday.
You're right. I did not mention that.
Not that anybody's interested in AIX anyway.
I think they are, though. I think they are. I should put that on here. You know, let's just add it really quickly. One, AIX released yesterday. Cool.
So I have it written down that 3000 gets archived in September as well. Do we have an exact date on that?
I think we do it the week before the release.
Right.
So the silicon release. So it would be, is that the 15th?
Let me pull the calendar.
Let me pull it up too. Yeah, the 15th.
Yeah, the 15th.
So I could put that on here too.
Also, that'll mean like Python 2. It's finally,
That's right.
yeah.
Woohoo. Thank you for helping. It's awesome. Thank you, everyone. So some updates there from the release team in general, because they're awesome. Thanks, guys. Thanks, folks. I'm trying not to say guys. I'm struggling. Thanks for helping.
Friends,
Okay.
people, fellow
Friends,
travelers.
friends, fellow
So
folks.
I had a quick comment before we jump into Q&A
Sure.
from Pedro, who is has lost the ability to speak for whatever reason. I suspect technologically lost the ability to speak. He just wanted to draw. He wanted us to draw everyone's attention to. He has a pending PR that updates Black. So that for anyone who's on the call here that has any pending pull requests, it likely will require a rebase of your changes because the Black PR is quite extensive. So just drawing everyone's attention to that.
The most common changes that you'll see from that are what were previous implicit concatenation on multi-lines are when they you'll have seen that occasionally where it will be a string and then close quote space open quote and then the rest of the string and so it just removes that superfluous spacing and quote there for those. And then the other thing is commas at the end of some of the collections conflict with Pylint. And so those may have come across as well. So those are the two main things that I'm aware of that it will be fixing. So, but that will be throughout the code base. So it may cause some conflicts, but hopefully they shouldn't be that severe.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else? Question. Oh, a couple of people have noticed that the 3003.1 Windows installer is unassigned. Any comment on that? Is this an issue?
I saw it came through yesterday on in the Salt users group, and I pushed the signed installer up, so it should be good now. They can verify that, but
Do we have any clue why that ended out unsigned in the first place?
no, the other three that are up there are all signed.
Yeah, so just one of them managed to.
Well, it's the same script that runs, generates the hashes, and signs the files. I don't know how it missed that one.
Yeah. Okay. That's super weird. Big Brother is watching. If there aren't any other questions, I had a topic to bring up.
I kind of have a question. This is my first open session to join, and recently, or maybe a month or two ago, was my first PR attempt. I was trying to add a little bit to an example. There's kind of an error in one of the examples where it works properly in the example at the kind of top of the page, but then the second example further on, it's missing a little something. So tried to put in a PR to address that, and it keeps failing all the checks and everything, and it's failing like for Mac OS Catalina, or for other operating systems and stuff that don't have anything to do with with the comment, the extra characters that I'm adding to a comment already in documentation. So I'm wondering, like, am I doing this wrong? I've tried several times now to pull the latest, because like master has moved on, and so I pull that into my fork, and I resubmit. So now there's been like 7 commits, which are mainly just me remerging master back in, but it keeps failing every time. So am I doing something wrong? Or I don't know if I should bring this up in the doc. I noticed there was a documentation sort of call also. So maybe I take this to that kind of forum. But yeah,
Well,
I'm just wondering.
this is definitely a good venue to mention this. If you
Okay.
wouldn't mind, if you could link to drop a link to the PR into the chat, into the Zoom chat, and then we can take a look at it.
All right.
I suspect, I don't know if the Mac OS tests are still failing. We still do have some flaky tests. When for a while we had like a lot of failing tests, specifically on Mac, that mostly should be resolved. So I suspect it's not related to your change.
Okay. Yeah, I don't suspect
Highly
it is related to
surprised.
my change either. It is in the middle of check. I just checked back on it after having not looked at it for a while. So it is pulling. I've pulled the latest from master, and it's running through its checks now. And we'll see if it fails on something. But yeah, let me get the link over here to the laptop that I have this Zoom session on.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we do still have a non-insignificant number of flaky tests, which can cause some issues there. So that's a known problem that we've been working and fighting and improving, but it's still a long way.
I get it, and that's fine. I kind of it was like, am I doing something wrong? But yeah, I totally get that there's build infrastructure is difficult. So
yes.
I get it.
And also
Normally,
welcome to the open hour, and thank you very much for the contribution. We very much appreciate especially the documentation examples. If there's bugs in there, having those corrected is a very good thing to have.
Sometimes I find myself thinking that a testing suite, particularly ours with over 10,000 tests, is a lot like those tricks where you see the people spinning the plates on the sticks. You're constantly like trying to keep the plate spinning, and sometimes the plate falls off and breaks.
Yes. Spinning plates and juggling at the same time.
Right.
On the back of a motorcycle. Going through flaming hoops.
Normally we can get those merged in as long as the docs tests aren't failing, right?
That has been our unofficial policy before. Like, obviously we prefer to have the tests all passing, but if it's a docs change, sometimes it gets snuck in.
Okay, I've put a link to that PR in the chat, and I will just watch to see how the checks go, since it's in the middle of rechecking it again.
Yeah, just at a glance, it definitely does not look like anything that should have any problems with the test. So I'm guessing those
Looking
are,
at
flaky
looking
issues.
at the PR, I'm guessing this is your first contribution, Daniel.
Yes.
Okay, I wonder if, so I see one of us needs to like approve. Oh, looks like someone did. Someone needed to approve the changes. I wonder if that was the cause of seeing some failures. Like the tests just weren't running because of it needed the approval.
Like it needed an approval to run on certain, like it, I felt like there were several in past ones that were all successful for, say, Fedora or for some other, and then there was like one version of one operating system or something that it failed on, and that was like it was it was strange to me that it would pass in the other languages or the other platforms and not this one.
Right.
But I don't know. I don't recall specifically which one it had failed on. Let me see if I can dig in the history somehow.
Yeah. So if you, it's actually a good thing to just at least have out in the wild. But if you look at the, like, if you go click on the details link on any of the builds, then it'll bring you to a window in GitHub. And then at the bottom of that, there's a link that says view more on Jenkins. And yeah, looking at the Catalina ones, it's some proxy tests that we have seen failing recently with just like trying to ping and not even able to ping. So there's some infrastructure issue there that we've seen problematic in the past, but it's one of those things that's kind of hard to track down because automating Macs is different, I think, mostly due to licensing issues.
So the important one would be for it to pass the docs test, right? If I understood what y'all were saying earlier.
Yeah. If it passes pre-commit and it passes the documentation and it's just a documentation fix, I mean, obviously in the ideal world, everything would pass.
Sure.
But unfortunately, we live in the real world, darn it. So
yeah.
Don't have unlimited time. Dang it. So yeah, that's basically it. So if it is passing, if you're just making a fix in the documentation and it passes the docs and the and all that, then feel free to go ahead and ping somebody on the core team, whether that's in the Slack or IRC.
Like before it was, oh, okay, there's a new reviewer on there that has a chat. Okay, so yeah, I have someone else to reach out to.
Yeah. And so just yell at us and say, hey, the docs change and other things are failing, and I'm pretty sure they don't have anything, because usually we have a little bit better visibility into that too, kind of across the board, to say, oh yes, we've been seeing this flaky failure happen across some of our PRs and working on it or whatever. So yeah.
And just looking back at when the last time these particular tests ran on your PR, it was back in May, and I believe that change has been, the change to fix those tests has been merged in. So the next time they run on those platforms,
so maybe maybe it'll work this time. Yeah, like I had checked, like after I submitted it, and then maybe I tried a couple more days in succession, and then when that didn't work, I gave it a week and I tried, and then it kind of it fell off my radar until sometimes when I get into GitHub, somehow I was like, oh yeah, and checked on it. So but I've had this on my calendar to attend one of these for a couple of them by now, and so finally my calendar was okay with me joining, so I thought I'd bring it up.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for bringing it up. Any other questions?
So
Or discussion topics?
yeah, I
Go
was
ahead.
going to say, so I had a question / discussion, whatever, as I was over the last couple of test clinics. It was Mark, I think, Major Trips asked, hey, could we get like some kind of API level tests for caching is what we're looking at. So I've been working on adding those, and I discovered that just today that local FS behaves a certain way, and the etcd cache behaves a completely different way as far as how some of the things work when either you don't have anything in the cache yet or whatever. So I was basically raising the question or posing the question, should our caching be consistent or as consistent as possible across platforms, at least the behavior there? Is that something that that seems reasonable? And I guess for those who are unfamiliar with the way that the cache works, is we have in Salt Cache Dunder init, there is a cache class, and that is that's instantiated and then has a multitude of backends, the local FS being the default cache, but you can configure it to use etcd or console or MySQL or Redis, I think, are the options that we have available today. But at least with my experience seeing the etcd differences in the API, yeah, that just kind of raised the question, should they be consistent? My impression is that they should be, and that we would want them to behave at least as much like local FS as possible, just under the, like, I haven't done a whole lot of research. It's only like 30, 40 minutes ago when I made that realization. So I haven't really dug into it to see if like, but my gut impression says that local FS would be the oldest cache and kind of the one that we would want to emulate the most where possible. Obviously, some of the caches just can't do the same things, but many of them can. So yeah, that was just kind of the question is, do we want to make that consistent, or should we enforce the inconsistencies?
I kind of leaned on the side of being consistent across cache modules as much as possible. Like obviously there's going to be differences, like subtle differences between them, but
Yeah.
the more consistent we can be, the better.
Yeah, I guess the particular example, the first one that actually popped up is that in local FS, if you look for a cache, so it stores under what it's called bank and key. So if you try to list the cache values for a bank and a key that don't exist, it just returns an empty list. But in etcd, if you try to return a bank and a key, or list a bank and a key that don't exist, then it raises a salt cache error, which is like, yeah, kind of, well, completely different there. One of them works and just returns an empty list, and the other one crashes for you. unless you've tried to catch that. And I went and actually looked through every place that tries to catch a salt cache error. And the only place that had a comment or a relevant comment, or kind of appeared to be looking at that salt cache error for list, was one that was specifically catching it when you're using local FS and you have a permissions error on the directory. It didn't appear that anything was considering a non-existent cache or an uninitialized cache as an error. So yeah, that was the only indication I had on that. Of course, there's like half a dozen methods, but yeah, if unless somebody has an alternate opinion or explanation on why we should keep those inconsistent, then that was my plan, was to go ahead and start making them the behavior among the caches more consistent, so that we have a nice consistent experience.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think of the cache modules in the same way as like any other modules that like we have virtual modules in front of, like the PKG module is a perfect example. Like there are tons and tons of inconsistencies between, well, not inconsistencies, but like differences between like the various like packaging systems. But the package,
we try to abstract them away as much as possible. Yeah, that was
exactly. Yeah, to make the experience like as consistent as possible. And we should do the same as much as possible with the cache modules. And I suspect a lot of the current inconsistencies just stem from, which is not a slight on the people that contributed them, but just the fact that they were all contributed by different people with different use cases.
Yeah, for sure. That was my understanding as well. And also my exact thought too is, wait a minute, we're abstracting away like with WinPackage and apt-pkg and yum-pkg and all these other packaging things. Why wouldn't we want to abstract away the caching mechanism as well, so that it's
there are a number of those type of modules which have arguments that are not necessarily used but must be passed.
Yeah.
Right. So those modules have to accept quargs, or they have to have that argument in their in their argument list in the function definition. And really, like really, I think maintaining consistency is going to be about sort of codifying what that API what it is, right? Like what things need to be there even if they're not used. Right. A while back, I had tried to sort of define this for package management, because back in the early days of Salt, there was a lot of functionality that just was implemented different in different package managers, and I ended up rewriting a lot of the functionality so that things work the same, or like with the same argument names and stuff. And it was a big task, and now it's like, okay, cool, now I'm the one person who knows this, right? So I did, and I don't know where that documentation went. It may have gotten moved around or incorporated in other pages or whatever, but like having a list of like, okay, for cache modules, these need to be implemented even if you don't use them, and these are their purposes. It'd be worth having that for not only for that, but like other things. For instance, at like all Xpillar need to accept these variables. I think that is already defined, but I don't know. It seems like it may be worth having a developer reference that has like those things that, like, hey, if you want to develop this, you need to know that all of your cache models have to have these variables, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And that's actually one of the impetus behind the tests that I was working on was basically for that. So if you're developing like your own custom cache module or your own custom ext mod or like ext pillar or something, that we have some tests that you can just say, here, drop your thing in here, and it will tell you exactly what you haven't done yet and exactly what you need to do going forward.
Yeah, and it's not only for like, I mean, it's one thing to enforce that variable names are used, but it's another thing to enforce behavior, right?
Yes.
So
yeah.
and that's where I think the documentation is kind of important, because someone can accept someone can accept a required argument, write a cache module that handles that argument differently from everybody else, write a unit test that confirms that's the correct behavior, and then, you know, wipe their hands of it, and then now it's the project's, you know, responsibility, you know, a couple of years down the line when somebody says, hey, this doesn't work like it should, you know.
Yes, yeah, for sure, absolutely. That was actually one of the things that is interesting about the caching, because the local FS has an expired behavior, but I don't think that etcd does, that at least that I can tell, because there's an updated function in local FS where you can like check to see if it's updated, but that function just straight up doesn't exist in the etcd module. So to your point, yes, you are exactly correct that we've got to be, you know, keeping an eye out and making sure that we're enforcing that expected behavior across the modules, whatever that is.
Did anyone else have any other comments or questions regarding the caching system? Once, twice. Sold. Any other questions anyone has?
Anybody have a joke? A joke. Wayne, you're up.
I heard a really bad joke the other day. I don't know if it's quite to the level of Wayne's jokes, but it's pretty bad. So there was a story in the local newspaper about a cement truck that collided with a prison van, and they ended up looking for hardened criminals. And I totally butchered it, the delivery, but it's pretty bad.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to disagree with you. That's getting pretty close to Wayne's jokes in terms of badness.
What's great is I don't know if you saw my face, but Gareth, you were halfway through the delivery there, and I either recognized the joke or saw where it was heading, and yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally saw that. I saw that look on that look of recognition on your face, of like both recognition and appreciation of the joke.
Was
admiration.
You know, my understanding was solidifying.
I heard another one a few weeks ago. It's kind of long, but it's also it's at that same level of corniness.
Bring it.
Okay, let me see if I can remember it and deliver it properly. So there's a small town somewhere in Europe, and there's a train conductor, and he's driving the train, and it's late at night. He falls asleep, crashes the train, kills a bunch of people, goes to jail, goes to trial, gets sentenced to death, given the electric chair. So it's his last meal, and he asks for one banana, a single banana. So he eats the banana. Next day, they put him in the electric chair, and nothing happens. Like just nothing. And they're like, "Well, this is like unprecedented. But we have to let you go. Like, there's a law in the books in this local town of like, if this happens, if the electric chair doesn't work, we have to set you free." So he's like, "All right, great." He leaves, goes back to his job. Somehow gets his job back. Driving the train again, falls asleep, crashes the train again, kills a bunch of people. They're like, "Well, that's it. You're going back to jail." Gets sentenced again, gets the death penalty. Next morning, or the previous day, he's like, I want 2 bananas this time for my last meal. And they're like, "All right, fine, here's your bananas." He eats the bananas. Next day, put him in the electric chair. Nothing happens. And they're like, "This is unbelievable. Like 2 times in a row, like we've got to let you go." So he's like, "All right, great." Goes back, somehow gets his job back as the train conductor. And so they're like, "All right."
Is this a government job?
So, so he's driving the train again, falls asleep, 3rd time, kills people. They're like, "This is ridiculous. Okay, we're going to jail. That's it. You don't get any last meal. Like, we know, like, there's something with these bananas." So the next morning, strap him in the electric chair. Nothing happens. And they're like, "What is going on? Like, what is the deal with you? Is it the bananas? Is it something else?" He's like, "Oh no, it's nothing else. I'm just a really bad conductor."
You redeemed yourself, Dareth.
I did, yeah. That was much better.
Total misdirection.
That was solid.
I got a joke kind of along the went sort of
Well, I
along
have
those
I
lines.
have a very quick one.
All right. 2 atoms bump into each other. One of them says, "Hey, I lost an electron." The other one says, "Are you sure?" And the first one says, "I'm positive."
Positive.
Yes.
So what do Harry Potter's best friend and his cooking pot have in common?
I don't know.
They're both called Ron. Called.
Oh, that one is so bad. What do you get when you cross the Atlantic with the Titanic? About halfway.
Yeah.
That one kind of tickled me. Well, thank you all for your jokes. This is fantastic.
I
Does
was
anybody have
hoping
any
that-
else?
No, I was just gonna say I was hoping that someone would have responded to Gary's joke with a "too soon."
Too soon. Oh, well, this has been good. I always love it when we end with jokes. Makes my day better. Hope it makes your day better. Okay, everyone. We'll see you next week. Everybody take care.
Hi.
Thanks.
Bye.